Stock drops to 10 on complete insanity. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. Your repeat visitor, welcome back. If this is your first time, please join us on Patreon for some better ideas on investing and trading. For example, the GameStop craziness today. Any rate, I wanted to do a brief show today, and I have to say, I'm stunned. If you enjoy investing and making money, looking at the case today of GameStop, I think, is just completely awesome because it shows a real shift in how investing is done and the type of things that can happen. So basically, if you already don't know the news, GameStop opened up today at about $62 a share, and currently it's about 29, and we have about 3 hours to go in the market day. It's 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The market closed at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, if you want to be precise on the exact timing. So I spent most of this morning talking with, I have a group of trader investors that I talk with regularly. And today, I think, was perhaps one of the most important days in the history of the stock market in seeing where things have been and where they're going. And that's what we're covering today. Primarily 4 points. The first is, obviously, we're going to cover what happened to the stock and why. The second is, what is the deal with GameStop? Why is it here? And why are they completely screwed? And it's more of a $5 stock heading to zero than it is a 30 stock heading to 100. And the other comments I'm going to be making really focus on the ability of this influencer to get the stock price up to where it was, and then the company kind of screwing them with extra shares. So that sort of covers the extent of what we're going to be looking at today. So the first thing I want to review with you is the big question of the day is GameStop actually worth, call it $50 that it closed at yesterday, or the 60, or the 10, etc.? The answer is no. Why? Because they did an early announcement of their earnings along with issuing extra shares this morning. And the reason they did that is they could see the huge valuation gap difference between their earnings and growth and what the market was offering for their shares, and took advantage of it. Now, their decision at GameStop to do this is part of the reason the stock price is falling. But I have to say that the reality is that that decision may save a lot of investors a great deal of money, and here's why. It's my belief that the $3 billion they took in for selling 75 million shares, my guess is that that's about $10 per share worth of cash now on the balance sheet that was not there before they sold this. Now, the big question today is, why did you guys sell all those shares? Because the stock price could have kept going north of where it was. It is Friday. It would have given the market makers a chance to review everything and then tank the stock on Monday. So it wasn't a bad move by the company to try to bring that cash in. And by the way, AMC also did the same thing, issued shares to take advantage of an inflated price created by this influencer. So the next question that comes up then is, is part of the reason that the stock price has fallen, obviously, is that the number one analytical point that the GameStop gentleman influencer, Kitty, pushed the stock price up was very simple. He had a feeling that the current CEO was going to be able to turn this thing around. Well, there's one problem with his analysis, and it's called Microsoft. Now, why is Microsoft a problem? Because when GameStop started, as you'll notice from stuff I've taught you guys, one of the companies featured by Peter Lynch in One Up on Wall Street was GameStop. Why? because he talked about the fact that if you keep going to mall after mall and you see a new retailer that keeps showing up in these different places, it's an excellent retailer for you to buy. Why? Because it gives you a chance to make money as it keeps expanding the number of locations. Now, this is where the analysis absolutely kills GameStop. So the core business was that there were teenagers that did not have a lot of money that wanted to go to the local mall and rent a game instead of buying it. A lot less money, and they get to enjoy the game and then return it after it's been rented. Well, that business got destroyed by the internet and the fact that the large entities like, I think of Microsoft now, but all of the entities that make games could go directly to their consumer with whom they had a relationship. And now they end up in a position where half to three quarters of where their revenue was coming from was absolutely screwed by the game developers going directly to their customers. Now, when we don't have that happening, we have things happening like, I want to say distributed gaming is what it's called. Basically, instead of buying a game, you can go use the internet and play against other players. And you don't have to pay a fee for that. You can go directly to the creator of that game. So that's the second sort of nail in their coffin. The third nail in the coffin was selling game consoles and other things within the store that weren't, let's say, parts A and B of their revenue. They don't have the power of Amazon pricing wise or other giant retailers for those game consoles. So in essence, every piece of their business is under attack. And that's why the stock price had dropped to $5 or below when this latest push up of the stock price began. So overall, the analysis of the company is that Mr. Kitty is suggesting that this is a great stock. You know, I have a feeling the CEO might turn it around. My answer to that is that it's possible they could buy a game or a company with that cash that allows them to vertically integrate like a Tesla to the whole stream of producing games all the way down to selling them. And there's a remote possibility that might work. But the problem is that all the people who create all those games right now are going direct. And if you aren't creating games, which they haven't been, you're screwed, which they are. So the next thing I'd like to review here is unbelievable losses by sort of the lead influencer. Between his options calls as well as stock ownership, he had as much as $500 billion worth, $500 million worth of shares. And he got on, and I don't see how his performance could have been worse. I mean, there could be some way, but for investors, a feeling is not really the way to get them energized. In fact, what I was surprised by from his presentation, and that did not occur, was the reason the stock price popped previously was what he had done a year and a half ago with AMC and GameStop. And the whole philosophy that was articulated to me by someone who participated in that was that as a way to screw the short sellers, they were simply going to buy up every share they could and hold on to it. And that would force the short sellers to buy them out at higher prices. In general, it's a good idea, and it actually worked. But the problem is that this is not what he did in this round. He went to Crazy Town, and his core idea was that I still like GameStop, still like the CEO, and I still like his turnaround plan. So I would say that there's a possibility that the spiking of the price and them selling shares may in fact save the company, because as it shrinks in its core business, it becomes in essence the value of the cash on the balance sheet, which keeps the company around longer than it would have been had they just relied on earnings. So they're going to get 5% interest per annum on $3 billion, which is going to add to earnings. And frankly, it might actually save the company. If you're going to tank the stock, why not just make it an even 5 billion or something, so that you can really power up those earnings with the portfolio that you're holding, namely cash that's earning great interest in your money market account. So then I believe that this has been an awesome learning experience and exposure, and I'm hoping people don't get killed across the board. But in general, I have to say this was the worst idea, and I can't believe this guy would cost himself $300 million with stupid comments like this, um, and not take the time to think it through so he could present something of value to those that were investing here. So, at any rate, overall, I would argue that this thing is going to fall to a little bit of furniture and the value, maybe $3 or $4 in core value, and any of the remaining value we're going to get from the $3 billion that they took in when they sold shares this morning. And then, other than that, this company, I believe, should be in bankruptcy based on the fact that there's really no future for it, given the environment they're in. And the new cash will give them options, including acquisitions, perhaps developing their own games. All these possibilities are now open to them because everything that we just saw happened. At any rate, we very much look forward to your comments. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Just au revoir, le hit the road, hodai fes, drasiti ni hama. In Jamaica, we say, enough respect, walk good man. Namaste, arrivederci.